stories.
You need to do one of those things like the Men in Black need to zap them.
Oh, yeah, neuralizer. Give me your phone.
They should have that,
fixing
man.
this.
No, don't do that.
I'm fixing it.
Don't do it, man.
I'm putting myself back.
Nick.
Stories to start your morning.
Thank you.
Brought to you by the unexpected energy of ExxonMobil. So the Giants announced they will be benching Eli Manning, which means rookie 6th overall pick Daniel Jones will make his first career start on the road against the Bucs. Chris, what do you expect out of Jones?
I expect him to throw the ball, but man, I need more bounds. I need the stat sheet to say, I don't care how many completes he's got, but I need Barkley to touch it 25 times. If they are doing what's best for Daniel Jones, they're doing what's best for that offensive line. If they want this kid's career to get off to a good start, that's what they have to do first. He's a young quarterback. I expect him to struggle. Golden Tate's not there. Shepard's been in and out of the lineup. He looked great in training camp, but the regular season is a different animal.
It does feel to me like everything they did in the preseason and training camp, the way they called plays in the preseason games, and now when they're putting him in there, it is to try to make him look as good as possible, which I understand. In that they waited until they're through a couple good defenses. Now you have Tampa and Washington, maybe two of the weaker defenses before, unless you wanted to wait far deeper into your schedule. My concern with Daniel Jones, aside from lack of college production, is since we've seen him with the Giants, he puts the ball on the ground about once a quarter. He has to clean that up. He fumbled at a ridiculous rate in the limited action in preseason. He even fumbled in the limited action week 1 we saw him.
I believe Todd Bowles is a pretty good defensive coordinator for Tampa Bay. I believe they're going to get after him. So it ain't going to be easy in Tampa this week. So even though Tampa Bay, it might seem like, oh, man, it's an easier week to put him in there. There is no cupcake. Unless you get the high school team with the Calder Dolphins. Unless you get them. They're the only franchise to ever go undefeated. They're the only franchise where they're going to have undefeated and I hope they don't win no.
Totally defeated.
Jaguars All-Pro cornerback Jalen Ramsey wants out of Jacksonville. The asking price is climbing with a recent report.
I have to laugh because Jalen said something both his teammates got up.
The Jags apparently want 2 first-round picks for Jalen. See, is he worth the haul? It seems like a lot.
Well, Mika Fitzpatrick just got a number 1 for him. He's not as good a player as Jalen is. Jalen's more proven. We saw Tunsil go for 2 number 1s. Now, that's not the asking price that typically you're going to get for a premier starter. But I wouldn't give up 2 number 1s for him. I'll give him a 1 and something. But Jacksonville, it is their job to try to get as much as possible. Jacksonville knows they can get a number 1. It's just a matter of what else can we get with that number 1? Can we get a player? All right, and I believe they have a great deal of interest in other players also besides that number 1 pick.
And it depends on who you're trading with. If you're trading with the Cardinals, and I'm just picking them out of thin air, then a 1 and a 3 might get it done because you expect that number 1 to be a top 10 pick. If you're trading with the Chiefs, who they've been tied to, then a number 1 by itself is not going to come close because that's going to be after the 27th pick of the first round. So how good is the team you're trading him to? Therefore, how good is the pick going to be? Forget Tunsil. Khalil Mack went for 2 1s. Jalen Ramsey, to me, is the same caliber of player at the same age Khalil Mack was at just as valuable as
No, sir. That defensive end, I can force a double team. Jalen can't force a double team. He doesn't change the math on the field. Defensive end is more important than even an elite corner.
All right, let's move on to the Panthers. Cam Newton's Sunday status against the Cardinals is unclear after aggravating the left foot, which he sprained in the preseason. See, what do you make of Cam's struggle with a rash of injuries?
It was fairly obvious in the game on Thursday that he was hurt. I thought that was the worst game I'd ever seen Cam. He looked like the Cam kind of at the combine, throwing the ball all crazy and everything. You knew the foot was still bothering him, and it's impossible for him to try to change his mechanics and everything that he's tried to do the last year and a half and be functioning on a lead foot, which is his left foot. It helps you guide the ball and for him to be accurate. So I didn't expect him to play well. I knew it was an injury. I knew that was not Cam Newton.
And he seemed to re-aggravate it in the game because early in the game, while he wasn't running, he was accurate. And then after the first quarter, his accuracy totally left him when he apparently re-aggravated the injury. If Cam Newton does not have his mobility to lean on, and he's run the ball 5 times for -2 yards this year, then he is a mediocre quarterback at best. With this foot injury, he doesn't have the mobility. And if you re-aggravated it, they might be forced to go to Will Grier this weekend against the Cardinals.
All right, moving on to the Steelers. After it was announced Ben Roethlisberger would undergo season-ending elbow surgery, Big Ben vowed he would come back stronger than ever next season, and his head coach Mike Tomlin is comfortable with the strong possibility Big Ben returns. CC, despite the optimism, should the Steelers be preparing for life without Big Ben?
Well, this is the thing. The Steelers have the information on the injury. It's not a career-ending injury. All right, they have a third-round pick in Mason Rudolph, who they are grooming. He's going to get a bunch of reps. So in the process, yes, in real time, they're thinking about what we're going to do after, but you have to give him an opportunity to be able to come back from the injury. If you signed him to a contract, a 3-year extension, you thought he could play those 3 years. There's nothing, any information that I've got from any people in the medical field or any information that I've read that shall stop him from playing 3 years. The only reason why we don't think Ben's going to play 3 years is because we think all these other quarterbacks are in better shape. So this is not the injury that will end his career. He'll be able to throw the ball. He'll get back to 100%. Peyton Manning, when he had the nerve damage in his neck and he had the surgery and everything, and he didn't have filling all the way in his hand, we didn't know what was going to happen. But the prognosis was it should return. But in some people, they don't get full filling. They don't get full strength back into their hand. So we knew what could happen to Peyton Manning. He started off spectacular, and then he faded. We were not shocked. The information on Ben's injury, it's totally different. It's not a career ender, but because of what we think about Ben and his lack of taking care of his body, that's the only reason why we think it's the end of the line. But any quarterback that gets injured at that stage, the team is thinking about what the future is. They wouldn't have spent the third-round pick if they weren't thinking about the future. I think more now it's going to be about style. Do we get back to being a more physical team, or do we continue to spread the field and throw the ball all over the place, which we've done, you know, basically like 5 out of the last 8 years.
And listen, Mason Rudolph's now their quarterback. He teams up with his old college teammate James Washington, see if they can rekindle some of that. You have Juju, and the Steelers, whether I think it's the right move or not, it's irrelevant in this regard. They clearly are not preparing for life without Big Ben. 8 hours after they found out that they were not going to have Big Ben for the rest of the year, they traded away their best asset to prepare for life without Big Ben to add Minkah Fitzpatrick to help the team right now and next year with Big Ben. So the Steelers clearly believe 2 things. One, we can compete this year with Mason Rudolph, or else you don't. They didn't trade that pick thinking what I'm thinking, that it's going to be a top 6 pick. They traded that pick thinking, you know what? Why can't we be a wild card team in the AFC? Why can't we, with Mason Rudolph, be better than the Bills or the Titans or whomever's going to be that 6th playoff team in the AFC? And we're going to have Big Ben next season, and then maybe a year from now, or a year and a half from now, we'll have a decision about Big Ben's final year of his deal and Mason Rudolph, who played well this season. That's how they see things going. I don't see things going that way, but they've made it very clear. They are still in win right now mode, and you have to keep in mind the 2 decision makers there, Tomlin and Colbert. I mean, they can't be thinking about 2021 Pittsburgh Steelers, because if 2019 Pittsburgh Steelers don't get it right,
then there is no 2021.
One or both of those guys might not be there. Exactly right. So they are in, as the Steelers have been my whole life, championship mentality despite the injury to the quarterback. I think they might look back on this with some regret, but they clearly think they can still compete this season, and they clearly think that Big Ben will be their starting quarterback at the beginning of next season.
But there has to be a part of the brain trust within the organization that says, well, looking at what we have, do we have the pieces that could turn into the Steelers team we had a couple years ago? Could Juju or James Washington be the next Antonio Brown? Could James Conner turn into the next Le'Veon Bell? Are they at the beginning? Maybe that's the too big of a ceiling, or you know, can we bridge that gap? And if so, maybe then you can wait for Big Ben, or go with Mason.
I want to tweak that a little bit. I think the question is more, can Juju be better than he was last year? All right, well, it's similar to what he was so good last year. Can Conner and Juju be close enough to AB and Le'Veon Bell that if our defense is far better than it was 2 years ago with all the investment they spent, another first-round pick, trading for Minkah Fitzpatrick, that's how you bridge the gap? They're not going to be the 13-3 team with all pros all over the place. But can they be 9-7, 10-6 with an improved defense, all those first-round picks, and Juju and James Conner continuing to improve? I think that's what they're anticipating, not that Juju's going to be AB, who's on a Hall of Fame track, that James Conner's going to be Le'Veon Bell, is one of the best running backs in football.
Ever since Chuck Noll took over the Pittsburgh Steelers and they struggled early, they've had Pro Bowl players, all-pro players in every single decade. The ownership has not changed. Their mentality has not changed. There were a number of times during Bill Cowher's tenure there that people called for his head. He's going to get fired. He's going to get fired. But the Pittsburgh ownership is more patient than any ownership in all of sports. So thinking that Mike Tomlin is on the hot seat, I would just say they're far more patient, and we're apt to be more wrong on that because that's just the way the Rooneys, the way they do business. They groom the players. They coach up the players. They have made all these Pro Bowl players. So they got hell of a confidence. If we draft them or we get on free agents, we can coach them up. That's what they've always done. In Ben's injury, it does not change that. Now, over the last 3 years, they lost Dick LeBeau. Since then, their defense hadn't been one of the top defenses. So style moving forward, what they're going to do, I know that the organization believes in the coaches and believe if we draft quality kids, the coaching staff will develop them into Pro Bowl.